Hello and welcome to the Mega Moth Studios official podcast. This is episode 4, and we're going to be covering part 3 of our origin story today. Our journeys with Midjourney and templating cards. How do we do it? How do we make them unique from the other TCG games? We're going to explore what we found out today on the official Mega Moth Studio podcast. So, Fortune Seekers, as always, I'm joined by my co-host and creative partner, Danny Ayub. Hey, Danny, how are you doing today?
Hey, guys, I'm doing great today. It's another great day to be alive and not at the bottom of the ocean.
Well, we might want this to be a little more evergreen, but yeah, we are in the week. In case you're watching this down the line, we are in the week after the, I forgot what it's not Event Horizon. But basically, the Titanic sub disaster, which I'm sure our audience will recall if they didn't already live through it just mere weeks ago.
And to be clear, this is not the Titanic sub disaster known as Jared Fogle. This is a different one.
Oh my god. Yes, I you know what? That situation reminds me of the classic line from the Social Media where. What was it? I think it was, what was the character that Justin Timberlake played? What was his name again? Do you remember?
It was the guy from Napster, Sean something.
Yeah, Sean something. Anyways, but he just like turns to Eduardo and says, hey, would you buy a Tower Records these days? And it's like, would you start a Subway franchise? I don't think so. Sean Parker, that's it. Yeah. But I think Jared definitely did some damage to the Subway franchise. It grew so much to where I would actually choose Subway over any other chain fast food place, and then it just I don't know, maybe people got their fill of Subway, or Jared Fogle's crimes caught up with the company's reputation. But it barely crosses my mind if I have to settle for Subway. I'm kind of regretful that I have to eat in the first place.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and deem Subway as an anti-sponsor for this episode because I just, with or without Jared, I'm never happy to be eating a Subway sandwich. And now they're doing their fresh sliced meats, and all I can think is, how many fingers are getting sliced every day at a Subway?
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
they're no Jersey Mikes.
They're trying to compete with Jersey Mikes, and they are not Jersey Mikes. Jersey Mikes, please sponsor the show. I should probably introduce myself. I introduced you, Danny, but I didn't introduce myself. I'm Joel Watts, and I'm the co-creator of X Seekers of Fortune. Danny and I created it together and started the studio, Mega Moth Studios, to publish it. And and we are running these podcasts in order to give you more information about the game and to chronicle our journeys of starting up a game studio and releasing our first game. So, kind of to share our wisdom along the way. And so with today's episode, as I teased up front, we are going to be talking about 2 topics. The first one is going to be how you utilized Midjourney in order to create prototype artwork so that we could have a prototype that looked very much like what we want the final product to look like. So we actually were able to print out what looks like traditional TCG artwork onto our cards. And while you focused on the art of the game, I focused on templating the cards, at the very least a prototype template that we're probably going to still revise from here. But we just wanted wanted to be able to present a card or a set of cards to our customers and the people who demoed the game early on that would look a lot like what they're used to in traditional board games or other TCGs.
Yep.
We're going to be getting into that topic here in a moment. But before we do, I do have the question of the week for you, Danny.
Oh, I like questions. And
yes.
I like weeks. And the combination is delightful. So lay it on.
I like weeks too, but they're starting to get very short recently. They just fly by.
Line them up, knock them down.
Okay. Well, today's question is, because we're talking about art and art's on our mind, I thought I'd ask you, if you could display one piece of art in your living space, what would you choose?
Yeah, what are the parameters of this? Is this like like mass production art, or is it like a unique art piece? Like if I could choose one,
It could be an al fresco. Like if you could just teleport a piece of art into your house that you think you would want to be associated with you, you would want people to see that would make a statement, I guess, about you.
you know how I am with open-ended questions that are this broad.
Oh,
I'm like,
is there any way I could? Well, maybe I can limit it like a classical piece, like something pre Civil War.
pre-Civil War. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm always. I mean, this is going to be kind of a I don't know, like a cop-out answer maybe. For some people are going to be like, oh, great. But I really like Van Gogh, whatever, Van Gogh.
It depends on what language you're speaking, but yeah.
I don't think I'm speaking any language right now. And growing up in the house where I grew up, in my mom's house, we had a really nice print of the sunflowers by Van Gogh in a nice frame, and I remember seeing it all the time growing up. And I think he, as an artist, speaks to me from the standpoint of just his story of someone who like struggled most of their life, never really saw the success that they wanted to see in life, but couldn't shake this compulsion to create art. And I think for a lot of people who are artists, there is an element of, maybe I don't want to do this, but I can't help myself from doing it. So that resonates with me. And I think the sunflowers, my mom has always been, has this affinity for the sun in all its forms. So I think there'd be this other personal level there for me that I would think about my mother every time I saw it. So I think those combination of factors means I'm going to go ahead and go for Van Gogh's sunflowers here. What about you?
That is a really great answer, and I'm almost really glad for your answer because I think it contrasts dramatically with my own. Because the beautiful sunflowers and the way that the colors that Van Gogh saw the world in were just so wonderful, and I think like it shows like a kind of an optimism, which doesn't always appear in every single piece of his, but that and Starry Night, his two of his most well-known pieces definitely had that kind of cheer, some sort of cheerful, majestic wonder to them. I'm going to go with what I think is my favorite art piece, and one that it took me a while to truly appreciate in life. But to contrast yours, I'm going to go with Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya.
Ah, okay. Hold on.
I mean, this one is... Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Google this while you're talking about it.
No, please do. It's one of my favorite images of all time. This Goya made this painting on his walls for himself. I don't think he intended the world to see it. He was painting to express himself in a time of, I think it was a time of civil war. It was as though his entire world was collapsing around him, and I don't think he ever got a reprieve from that. I think he died in a time of war, or passed in a time of war, so he never saw like the peace again. The way that he depicts Saturn, mid consumption of a body, having eaten like one arm and the head, and is working on another arm, and as though, and with a look on his face and expression as though he's doing something shameful, and you have just walked in and shined a light on this shame. It definitely reminds me of the look my cat gives me when my older cat is eating our kitten's food. It kind of has a similar shame. Like, I know I'm doing something
when your
wrong.
older cat is eating your kitten, and I was like, oh God, yeah, this is a little on the nose, Joel. Like, is this your way of telling us something terrible is happening in your household?
Possibly, but this is. I think it's just this piece is, I think, a warning. Like, I would definitely want to be. It's something I want to be reminded of daily, that this is the madness that humanity can fall into if it doesn't commune with nature. If it doesn't, find peace, it will, lead to this like older generation, just, an older generation destroying a younger generation for the sake of the older generation, which is also just going to die eventually. It's like we're supposed to pass on to the next generation. So, and Saturn devouring his children is like the ultimate, I think, representation of older generation trying to stay in power to the detriment of society.
Well, yeah, I think that is a very salient message, especially in this day and age where it feels a little bit like there's a imbalance in the opportunities and available resources between generations. And, not making any sort of specific political commentary here, but I do definitely see a reflection of this piece in the world today.
Yeah, probably why it resonates so much with me. And funny, well, I don't know, like funny anecdote about this, but my mom does this, or at least she was for a while. She did this jewel art where it's like little beads, like almost bead-like things that are very shiny and shimmery. And it's sort of like pointillism, but with like these little jewels. And she would do that to create like nice little landscapes, fall landscapes and things. And it gives you this sense of being like 8-bit graphics. Like it has like, aside from the shininess to it, it has like that 8-bit, like, pixely graphic look. And I think maybe I'll just try to convince her every Christmas, but I'm trying to convince her to do this piece in that style so I can hang it in my house.
But I feel like your mom could not stomach sitting there and bejeweling this image.
I know it would be a sacrifice for her to do it for me, wouldn't it?
One day, I hope that we are successful enough that someone sends you what you're asking for in the mail unsolicited,
and then I think I'll consider that a tier of success. If audience, if you are arts and craftsy, if you like to do your own interpretation of Saturn devouring his son, I will start collecting them. And anyone that's sent to me, as long as it's within the realm of good taste for this art piece, I will display it in my home. I'll dedicate a wall in every house I live in to display this art piece in its various forms.
And if we raise $500 on Kickstarter, Joel will get this tattooed on his body, but in place of the sun, it will be a Subway sandwich.
Okay, I might agree to that.
$500, guys. $500.
It's just ironic enough and within the realm of satire enough that I would. But I don't know if we'll discuss how much money I'll do it for. But I have contemplated offering up my body for a tattoo for a high enough donation on Kickstarter. And if we can agree that, Saturn devouring his son, but as Jared eating a Subway sandwich, I could go for that.
You're going to get Jared Fogle tattooed on your body now? For $500?
Not 500. We said we talk about the price.
Wallet? Where's my wallet? Can I just pay you for that right now?
You also have to cover the expense of the tattoo, probably. But well, let's move on because we still have to figure out our Kickstarter tier goals. And don't be surprised if some wild thing like me getting a tattoo is on there. But trust me, my price is going to go up.
Trust me, he's a tattoo virgin. So this is not like he's got a bunch of tattoos and he's adding one. This man has no tattoos. So this would be the first tattue.
Yes,
and to get a picture of Saturn devouring a Subway sandwich on his face for the low price of $500.
I was imagining more of like running across my ribs, ribs down to my hip.
You keep saying that like it's just nothing to get your your ribs tattooed. Like,
oh no, I'm not saying I know it's going to hurt like hell, but I'd also like to put it up in a place that was both aesthetically pleasing and concealable by a shirt. I am also realizing that I like to go jogging without my shirt on, so I would probably be showing this tattoo off to the world.
I want you to get a McRib package tattooed on your ribs. I think that would be very, very classy. Can we do that? Can that happen? Is that an option?
Like I said, we can talk prices later. Maybe I'm inspiring your something random for later in the episode, but why don't we jump into today's main topic? How about that?
Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
So, so Danny, do you have any thoughts right now about the card templates? And it was a journey we took together to get to where we are. Do you have any memories of the early templates that we used, moving away from the black and white clip art version of the cards that we started out with?
Yeah, I think that the main thing that I would say characterized the early templates were they were a little chaotic in terms of there wasn't any consistency in my memory between like the size of text boxes or font sizes. everything kind of felt like it was a little all over the place. And it was exciting to see the like actual art, or I shouldn't say the actual art, but rather like our first like art that was made specifically for these cards, even if it was just proxy art, and even if it was an early iteration of what is currently on the cards in terms of concept art. But there was definitely this period of time where I think we both were looking at like, oh, this is going to be a little more difficult than we initially thought. I don't know. What was your initial experience starting to put together these early templates?
One thing I do want to emphasize, and something we find very important for our process, is iterative design. You know, you do something that works well enough, and then you try to make it better. And something I was trying to do very early on was really break the mold, I would say, of the traditional card templating. And I think you are really good at this part of iterative design. I think I was presenting you something very different, like almost like taking what might have been learned from games like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, and I was trying to throw away those things or trying to do something different. And I think you did a great job of slowly nudging me towards something that's a little more conventional. But I think through that process, we found something that was different enough while also being same enough. So that has that classic element of being novel, but familiar. So I'm looking at these early cards, and something I am noticing is that I put basically there is no text box. It's like every card is full art at this point in our design process. And the name of the card is at the top in its own box that is only as consistent as the length of the name of the card. Like any card that has too many characters in its name is, the text box grows, or the box for the name. And then the rules box is like, what was the word? Opaque. Like it isn't a solid color, so you can see the art coming through, which I thought would be really neat, but it also really makes it hard to read. I'm looking at one of these early cards. I have no idea. It's like one of those, like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think one of the things early on, and we were very inspired by trying to, make the cards feel like they were jumping out of the pages of an adventure magazine, or the modern day equivalent, which would be a graphic novel. So I think some of those early style cues came from, the idea of maybe doing some boxes that you might see in a graphic novel, those white boxes that have some description in them. But ultimately, and this is something that I think is an important lesson as you're embarking to design your first prototypes that you're going to bring out to the public. Style is important. You want people to look at your product and say, oh, this is interesting. But if it's not functional, then they're not using it. They're not playing the game in a way that is easy, and you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. At the beginning of the prototyping process, at the beginning of the playtesting process, you really need people to be clear on what the game is, so you can understand whether or not the mechanics are working. Because fundamentally, your game is a set of mechanics, right? And then whatever the social aspect is, that the interplay between people, et cetera, et cetera. But if people don't understand how to interpret your cards, you've got a big problem. And that doesn't go away through the final. So, kind of like you were talking about, I mean, there is this sort of balancing act between how do we do something innovative? How do we do something that people are going to look at and be like, oh, that's a little different than anything I've seen before, while also maintaining the sort of cornerstones of, the language of putting, the design language of a playing card. The other thing I just wanted to say real quick, because I think you make a great point about iterative design, and hopefully we probably will do a whole conversation episode on iterative design at some point. But one of the key concepts that we used, which of course we borrowed from, the tech world, and I'm sure this is not even where it originates, but is this idea of MVP, minimum viable product. So much you get in your own way because you're trying to make things perfect. And the reality is, your favorite things, the things that you think are most perfect in the world, they didn't come out of the womb that way, so to speak. generally speaking, they were iterated on and refined little by little until they gradually became something fantastic. So anytime, whether it's the prototype of the card, whether it's the art for the card, whether it's the marketing for the game, the website, whatever it is, one of the very first steps that we always take is defining minimum viable product. And we aim for that. And we say, that's what we need to get it out in the world. Once we achieve that, we're going to put it out in the world. And through this process, we'll make notes for what we want to do for successive upgrades or updates throughout the life cycle of whatever it is that we're talking about.
Oh yeah, you need to get something out the door and something just posted so that you can even start revising it and turning it into what you want it to be at the end. I think in culture we often think of the stroke of genius coming to like an artist or a creator, and all of a sudden, it's like they had nothing, and then all of a sudden they have everything, and they have it perfectly planned out. It always is like. It always really is. I mean, I'm sure there's a few examples that really did happen that way here and there, but in reality, it is, I have a vision of where I want to go to, and I'm going to take small steps to get there, and I'm going to, take this and revise and revise and revise until it actually looks like what we need it to, it not only accomplishes what we need it to do, but also it looks good doing it. And you mentioned the tech world. I personally pull my love for iterative design. At least when I heard about it first or most consistently was Nintendo, which is probably my favorite video game maker. Well, at least like they have their controversies just like any other company, but when it comes to their
like
process,
Subway or whoever,
yeah, well, nothing as bad as Subway. I mean, Nintendo definitely has like their demons in their closet, but that mostly revolves around like not being able to stream their games well, and lawsuits and things like that for copyright infringements that are. Anyways, we don't have to get into that. We can have an entire episode about like the sins of our favorite companies, just like Apple, just like Windows, just like, almost any company under the sun that's existed for more than like 5 years. They're going to have some baggage that go along with it. I can't wait for us to get our own baggage.
I don't know. I can wait. I think I can wait on that one.
But to come back to the card templates, one of the things that looking through, because I went into a folder that I think was where I put all the tests along the way. Like, so I'm like rapid fire going through the templates. And the thing that really, I think that I was able to latch onto and start building the cards around that came way earlier than I expected was what we call the information stamp that has the type of Action X card it is, whether it's a feat, a site, or a relic, and what lead identity it is associated with: rune, glyph, vision, or myth. And I remember us having a conversation about wanting to get some like graphic design element that was like comic book inspired. And I remember us looking together at a cover of like a Green Arrow comic or something like that. And I just remember basically, I'm sure it's changed since then, but I almost took just beat by beat, like, okay, there's like this, there's this symbol at the top, and then it's like this like wide, or a tall rectangle, and there's like, three layers of information on that rectangle. So I just almost curbed it completely from that comic book cover, and I'm sure I'm not the first to do something like that. And I think that started to anchor, like if I'm looking through these, like anything before we did that, I don't feel like had a real anchor or consistency on it. Like they were all struggling for like an identity, and I think that stamp really brought the identity to our cards, so much so that we started putting the stamp on also the lead cards in the game.
Yep.
But
there was another major milestone that I remember, and if I'm jumping ahead here, by all means stop me, but and as we talk a little bit more about the art process, we'll discuss this in from a different angle. But around this time, I was generating the initial concept art for the cards, and what we were finding was there were some really great pieces that I was generating, and really great is relative, but as to what we had previously, I mean, the really early stuff that we had generated was freaky, to say the least. And I'd send it to you, but the problem was the art was, the focal was, up top on one piece and to the right on another and the bottom. And it was making it very difficult for the cards to have any sort of consistency because, you would have to kind of move the art around and then maybe you wouldn't have the right space, left over. And then we'd have to figure out, can we extend the art? There are all kinds of things. And so, we sat down, we had a serious conversation and said, hey, look, we need to take this from two different perspectives. One, I think you need to create a wireframe. We didn't use that term yet. That's something that LD provided. So I'm sure you knew about it. I wasn't aware of it. But we said, okay, this real estate is where the art's going to live. This real estate is where the name of the card's going to be. Here's where the stamp's going to be. And here's the text real estate. And everything is going to fit into those parameters moving forward. And I think that's where that final layer of all the cards look the same in your hand, so to speak, came into play. And it was sort of this, I think that a lot of people out there who have either a design background or have done a lot more, like a graphic design background or have done a lot more game design than us or whatever, are going to kind of be like, duh, guys, like, why did you guys have to reinvent the wheel here? Like, this is very standard practice, but we all have our blind spots, right? So, and sometimes the way you and I work is unconventional, but I think that the upside of that is we really get to understand why certain things work under the hood the way they do, in a way that if you're just looking up something online and you read on a blog that this is how you're supposed to do it, you may not fully appreciate the rationale behind it.
And I would say, I think I definitely came to the table trying to reinvent the wheel. We have referred to the fact that we are big fans of Magic the Gathering, so I didn't want to just seem like I was trying to make a Magic the Gathering card in the template of this. And so I think by going so out of left field and more slowly bringing it towards what was conventional in terms of layout, it allowed us to find the places where we can be unconventional but still consistent, which I think is important. Like in our cards, in the final product, the title is like right of the card is right above the rules box instead of at the top of the card, which allows for the artwork to extend from like nearly the top of the card, like the from like one border down. And so it really puts the artwork front and center, and like the first thing you really observe before you like start reading things, like it's art first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just pause here to give you a compliment. I think that, we've been friends for a long time. And I think that one of the things that I've always admired and appreciated about you and valued, and in fact, it's, one of the primary reasons why I'm always so eager to partner with you on things, is more so than anyone I've ever met in my life, you have a sort of an alien perspective about things. I mean, most people kind of have an opinion or a way of thinking about something that is predictably inside of a box, and then maybe it's a little bit more to one side or the other, and then sometimes they're outside the box. But more often than anyone I've ever interacted with, have you provided me with, a perspective that is so different than how I would think about something that, and not only just different, but actually something that is, to me, interesting and worth exploring and being like, oh, I would have never thought about it that way. And that's extremely valuable in a creative partnership is, you do want to have enough in common that you guys can actually, come to a consensus on things and work together and actually produce things. But ultimately, you also want to have enough creative difference and perspective on life that's different to encounter interesting ideas and to play off of each other. And you just don't get that if two people are coming from a very similar mindset. So I think of it as one of your superpowers. And, I hope that over time the audience really gets to see, some of your more out there takes. And I'm sure I can facilitate that in some way, but
yeah, I'm sure you will. And thank you so much for saying that. And I have always, it's like, I have everything. I often feel like I have everything you need to be a prolific and, like almost sage-like poster in this internet day, except for I have almost zero desire to post my thoughts. I have to like really wrangle myself to like compose a post on Facebook or Instagram these days, because I just for me they're just my thoughts. I just like I don't put as much stock in them, but then when I do tend to share them, they tend to resonate or illuminate. So yeah, thank you for saying that. And I did want to get back to the card though. I think just to wrap up the templating issue, or not issue, but the templating story and journey that we took on templating. So at some point in the process, we decided that we wanted the leads to have artwork associated with them, like to just be more than just the lead symbol, which is what I think we had for a long time. And you use Midjourney, and we're about to get into the Midjourney discussion, but you use Midjourney to like sort of generate like these texture, like something a little more than textures, but less than like characters or anything like that, or actual scenes, and like rocks, like almost stacked rocks for ruins, and like cryptic, like hieroglyphics for glyph. Like a shining ray of sun for vision, and an intricate maze for myth. In each of those having colors associated with them, and I for a long time I had just randomly grabbed like borders for our cards that were like they weren't my favorite. It was like sand or clouds, things like that. And then when you had made those, I knew pretty early on after you had made those for us that I wanted to make those the borders of the Action X cards. But it definitely took some time because I knew it was going to be a huge undertaking. But sometimes you really do need to do those undertakings because it let me, like, changing out those borders made me have to kind of build the cards again from scratch. And that made it to where I got to make sure there was consistency throughout every card that might have been lacking before. The text, I think all the rules boxes for all the text of the cards are all equal height now, and almost every font in the game is like the same. Finally, speaking of fonts, I think that was a big thing that brought all the cards together. Is we decided at some point that each lead identity would have its own font associated with it, and once we found all 4 fonts for each lead identity, I think it made the cards. It's that sort of like thematic through line that brought everything together. So, you don't want to go too crazy on fonts. You need them to be readable, but let some character come through them.
There's a lot of different ways to tell your story, and you alluded to some of them. I mean, whether it's the borders, whether it's the fonts. One of the things that has been a guiding principle for us from the beginning was, how do we tell the story we want to? What are all the different avenues that we have to convey flavor and nuance to the audience? And that's something that's very important to us, because at the end of the day, we don't want this just to be a game that you're playing and having fun. We want this to feel like the act of playing a game and having fun is also the act of playing through a story where you're the protagonist and you actually feel some amount of, I'm experiencing the tropes and excitement of my favorite genre, in this case, an action adventure, in Indiana Jones inspired, world of treasure seeking. In a future set, maybe you're on the high seas hunting monsters, or, fill in the blank, right? There's lots and lots of places where we plan to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely have a few loaded up. In fact, we were talking about the theme for a set that at earliest would be like delivered in 2020. What did we say? 2026 was probably the earliest it would be delivered. So yeah, don't worry. We definitely, like, be on the lookout. We have years of content to come if we when we get this up and running. And also, I just to go back to something you said that I love. It's like there is no avatar in this game. You're not like stepping into the shoes of somebody else. You are you in the game. You are the player. You are the character. So, if you want a DLC hat, put on a hat. You want your character to be dressed up in a suit, come to a tournament dressed in a suit. You are the avatar.
Absolutely. I mean, we want players to have their own adventurer identity. And I mean, once we get organized play up and going, I think having, pseudonyms and doing some amount of cosplay is something that we're going to celebrate and support. We
Yeah.
want people to really feel like they are who they want to be when they're playing this game.
Yeah. I would say that if the true greatest player of X Secrets of Fortune ever would be not only one who could win the tournament playing the game, but also wins the costume contest or the cosplay contest that we would hold afterwards during the award ceremony stretch of it. If you can be that sort of double threat, you will truly be the true fortune seeker.
Yes, the only person that would upstage them is the person who steals the prize without winning the tournament.
Yes. Well, we'll talk about our super secret plans, later. But why don't we go ahead and talk about the other side of the art of the cards? We've talked about the templating, everything that goes around it, but really the thing that sells the flavor of the game and tells the story of the game is the art that is in the middle of it. And this is where you did the heavy lifting during the prototype development process, or at the very least, you took this on your plate, using Midjourney to create art pieces that were good enough to tell the story and to live up to the standards of TCG players who have been, if TCG players are spoiled for anything, it is a plethora of beautiful art that they could have at their fingertips and, buy on cardboard. So what was that journey like, and tell us what it's like to work with Midjourney.
I've been fascinated with AI for a really long time. And I've been kind of quietly watching the developments, waiting for something that I felt like was actually usable tools. And it wasn't really until ChatGPT and Midjourney had come out that I felt like the tools were enticing enough for me to really spend time with. Previously, I'd toyed around with like Replica, and I dabbled with other AI things, but none of them had really made me feel like they were ready for prime time until really started encountering Midjourney. And it's funny because the very early stuff that we were getting out of, I don't even know when the first versions I was using were. It's probably V2 or something like that. The art that I was getting out of it, I was super impressed by. And looking back at it now, it's kind of like, it's like when you watch the special effects in an old movie, you're like, how did we think that was good? But it was just so novel that you could type in words and that the computer would imagine, that this intelligence would imagine something that even remotely resembled what you were trying to get it to imagine. And then through successive iterations, the power of Midjourney has only accelerated. Version 5 is extremely a powerful tool. Version 4 was already a very powerful tool, and can only imagine what's coming around the bend. The big leveling up as it comes to Midjourney is really understanding prompting. And I'm going to just say this to everyone right now. If you're, alive in the world today, I think that it's going to really be important to master prompt crafting. Whether it be for ChatGPT or for Midjourney, or any other AI application that comes down the line. I think it's one of those things that seems very esoteric to people who aren't doing it. Just like in the early days that even using a computer made you seem like you were some sort of genius. But the reality is things tend to seem more complicated than they really are. And I think most people, if they jumped in and started trying to prompt on these things, once they, took a few minutes to understand how these things worked, they'd find that it was really pretty straightforward. And I think it's super important for us to, embrace these technologies as they come along, because maybe they're a flash in the pan, maybe they're something that's defining the next, so many decades of how we work. And so you don't want to be behind the eight ball. We've all encountered people who maybe didn't take learning how to use a computer as seriously as they should have, and now they seem like they're really struggling and behind. And I don't necessarily like that, but ultimately it's a reality, and we all have to make use of the tools that everyone else is using in society if we plan to be relevant to the workforce. Again, everyone can find their own way, but if you want to increase your opportunities, it's a smart thing to do, and it's not that difficult.
I would say, there have been flash in the pan technologies, but I do feel like almost every single one of them, even if they were a flash in the pan probably were iterated upon and were maybe usurped by something else that still used, the underlying algorithms, underlying, workflows. So I guess what I would add to that is, definitely take the soft skill approach, like, learn how to think, how to utilize these technologies, because if something else comes along, you'll still have the way, the methodology of thinking in the ways that the technology needs you to. You could have been a Windows 95 power user and understood how Windows 95 worked in and out, but eventually Vista is going to come along. Eventually Windows 10 is going to come along. Eventually your entire company might have to switch over to Mac or to Apple and use the Macintosh OS instead of the Windows OS. But if you understand how file trees work, if you understand how to navigate a program or how to identify how to navigate a program, no matter what OS you're in, those are the things that will allow you to adapt.
Yeah, adaptability is key. And I think, like you said, identify what core skills are likely going to make you most adaptable, and definitely invest the time in learning those. Mm-hmm. Talking more specifically about art generation, one thing you said here before I jump too deep into the technical there is, when you're talking about TCG, specifically Magic, I mean, for a lot of people, the art is just as much a part of what they love about the game as the game. Mm-hmm. And, for me, I did not want to make a game that I felt like the art did not excite people, that they weren't, wanting to see that art on a playmat, or they didn't want to potentially have a print of it in their house, or that they didn't identify with it. It didn't make them feel something. If art doesn't make you feel something, if you don't get lost in the world, like feel like you're looking into a window into this imaginary world that you want to exist in, we haven't done our job. So that was something that, I've taken very seriously. And as we're starting to work with artists now to commission the pieces that will actually be on the cards, that's something that I think we both have a lot of trepidation about is, yes, we want to see real art on these cards, and we have an amazing artist or artists working on this. But, are we going to be able to really feel like we're giving you that window into the world that we want to?
Yeah, and that's where like a new set of skills is going to come across for us. I mean, and we can talk about that in future episodes as we start to tackle it. But prompt. You learned how to prompt AI, and I saw how frustrating that could be. I should say, from my perspective, I wasn't with you every single time you made an art piece, but there was a few times that you would call me up and just talk through, like while we were on the phone, trying to wrangle good art. And so many times you would give a prompt, and then the art that you got back was so bizarre and so off point that you did not even want to share it with me. And I would be there with you for upwards of 2 hours just before you even started to get into the realm of like, okay, this is good enough for us to talk about and start making notes in order to morph it into what we want it to be. And, I would, I would be at home, either working on my templates while you were doing that, or I would just be like doing dishes and other chores while you were doing that on the phone with you. And I just remember thinking, man, this is taking a while. And the thought process that you would have to go through, it was sometimes, it was just like you weren't even talking to me. You were just talking out loud, trying to figure out what to do. But I was just going to end this part of the conversation today talking about the Midjourney journey by asking you, and I think I know your answer, what was the hardest art to get Midjourney to produce?
I mean, it shouldn't be, but for whatever reason, Midjourney doesn't seem to understand what a pickaxe is. And for whatever reason, we decided we're going to have one of our key cards and one of the most exciting cards and one of the most fun cards be Excavator's pickaxe. And we knew we needed awesome art for it. And for whatever reason, Midjourney almost refuses to acknowledge that pickaxes exist. And so that definitely took a lot of wrangling to get it. I mean, so part of it is prompting, right? But then you've got some other tools at your disposal. So you can upload images to Midjourney to give it cues as to what you're looking for. But a lot of times it'll take ideas from that art that you don't want it to. So it's not just as easy as being like, okay, here's an art, I'm going to upload it, and now you're going to produce something that's exactly what I want. Honestly, for Excavator's pickaxe, I had to do that, and then I had to take what it outputted, and then I had to Photoshop what it outputted with other stuff that it outputted, and create maybe like 2 or 3 successive iterations of like a Photoshopped image to create a new reference image to send it in to start getting out stuff that resembled what I wanted to see. So there's, and again, I'm sure there are better ways to do this. I mean, I'm definitely, like we said earlier on, a lot of times, you might look at a blog and be like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. Da 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 da. That was easy. A lot of times, Joel and I are definitely out there, trying to figure it out ourselves, and it takes us longer, and it's meandering, and it's janky. But at the end of the day, we understand some of the elements better than we would have otherwise. The other thing I want to say is the most frustrating thing about Midjourney isn't really when it gets it wildly wrong. It's when it gets it exactly right, say for an extra couple of fingers or some other detail that you're just like, why? And look, digital art is a thing. You can go in there, you can work it out, whatever. And we did a number of times. But when you get that close and there's just something off where you're like, maybe we can fix that, but the amount of time it's going to take, is it really worth it? It can be really, really frustrating. You're like, we're so close to having amazing art. So close. Yes. Yet so far.
It's like, that piece looks great, except for the woman's eyes are cross-eyed.
They're cross-eyed, or she's got 15
like you said,
fingers.
the amount of fingers, and that's definitely been improved with the most recent version of Midjourney. But I definitely, one of the early pieces that you tried making, it was for our card Digger's Dugout, which is supposed to be a bar in universe that all the characters are go to and meet up at, sort of the watering hole for all the adventurers, and you were trying to convey that with a friendly barkeep, like an old timey friendly barkeep, in a little like Tilby hat, and you would send me art, and it's like, yeah, his face looks great, he like has a good disposition, and then he's just laying his hand on the table in front of him, and it has a dozen fingers on it.
Yeah, he had like some Eldrazi hands,
Yes. Yeah. I also, I think a funny story that, or a funny little, we should say for the audience, you are a father. I am not. I am a single man. I live with my girlfriend, but as of right now, I don't have any children. And I tried to excuse Midjourney's issue with the pickaxe by saying, well, are pickaxes really that relevant? Maybe it's just like doesn't have that much, reference for pickaxes, because like they're not really talked about much these days. And then you reminded me, no, a pickaxe, like your son could draw a pickaxe from memory, because Minecraft has made the pickaxe a household, item that you would know about, and an icon of an entire game.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's really no excuse for Midjourney not understanding what a pickaxe is, other than, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just one of those ways that, I secretly think that the AI has been here for a while and is just trolling all of us in subtle ways. Oh. And I think this is one of those ways.
Well, when a troll trolls a troll, right?
Yeah, talk to my kids, dude.
All right. Yeah. Well, we definitely should have them on sometime. I mean, we definitely could use some guests.
Maybe. I mean, certainly Oliver would be into it, but
I think so.
Sebastian, I don't think so.
I'm sure Oliver would spend the entire episode just trying to make me go slightly insane. That's, that kind of covers at least the overview for card templating and Midjourney art production, which we could spend an entire episode on each of those topics, like really pulling them apart. But we do like to do these. We like to start with these overviews, especially because this was all to tell the origin story of how the game came from idea to Comic Palooza, with working prototypes that we were displaying for people. So in doing this, getting the card templated and getting the art on the cards, all the Action X cards, we were able to then, and all the things that we learned along the way, we were able to go to Office Max and have them print out, set up the cards to be printed on sheets and cut up those sheets, and then we made prototypes. Utilizing just the methods of making proxy cards for any other TCG game. We put a regular Magic card in a sleeve, and then we took the art that we printed out and cut down and just put it over the magic card. And with that prototype, we actually, after we made it, we went to a local LCG in your area called The Adventure Begins, TAB, I believe, Tab.
Yep.
Yeah. And we just went and with our game in hand, played at one of their tables, and soon enough, some folks came in who were, getting ready to play. I think it was Digimon that night was the card game of choice, but they started rolling in, and they didn't have anybody else to play against because they were the first few there, and we just sort of summoned somebody over. Do you remember his name at all?
Yeah, I believe his name was Justin, and he was a Flesh and Blood player, and I owe Justin a call or a text. He was super generous with his time, and definitely wanted to keep up with the game, so I should reach out to him and invite him out here one of these days soon.
Oh yeah, especially because now Justin could jump online and sign up for our beta and get an invite directly into it, as well as an invite to our Discord server, which you could do at home as well. So go to megamothstudios.com, click on the X Seekers of Fortune tab, and put in your email address, and you'll be onboarded really fast. But do you remember that experience of playing with a new person for the first time? Because you actually were the one who played against Justin. I sort of stood back and coached him a bit and talked to some of the other players at the store. How did it feel just knowing this is something we've created, and now I'm sitting across from a kid teaching him how to play the game?
I mean, honestly, it felt like the moment of truth, right? We had spent, I don't know, 6 months or whatever it was building this game. We had play tested online with people, but, there's always that lingering doubt in your mind that the people who know you are going to, lead you on a little bit about how good what you're doing is, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And we always knew that, the real moment of truth was showing up to the LGS, showing it to enfranchised TCG players, and seeing whether or not they responded to it the way that we thought they might. And when they started playing, and when we started to realize, how Justin felt about the game as he was playing it, when you could tell that he was actually into it, when we started getting a few people walking over to watch the game and asking questions, we kind of knew that we did it. And we didn't really get that full-throated yes you did until we went to Comic Palooza and did it 25 times and saw the reaction and had people saying that they found the game to be addicting or that they wanted to buy it on the spot. It wasn't until then that I really knew that yes, the game we stuck the landing, but that moment at TAB with Justin was that first glimmer that, hey, maybe we did cross the finish line the way we wanted to.
Definitely. At the very least, we knew that we had hit a milestone in our journey towards getting, having a game that people wanted to play. And while you were playing with Justin, I was fielding questions from different players, overlooking this new shiny object that was in their store. Unfortunately, we could only play the one game with Justin. I think we had a dinner to get to that was already on the books. But I do recall standing there with a Flesh and Blood player, a Magic player, and a Digimon player, and sort of going over some of the high level ideas of the game, and just them sticking around and having questions for me. And I knew okay, these people we got their interest. If we have their interest, we have a pathway in. And they liked our answers for the most part. We talked to them about how we were the quality we were trying to get from the card printing and everything like that. And they were very positive towards it. The idea of it being a one-stop or a one-box purchase that you get the entire game, and it started making me think. And this might be, this is for marketing later, and this is hopeful wish fulfillment, but it got me thinking, if we could be the game that these guys play, intermingling, if the Digimon player and the Flesh and Blood player can't, they don't want to learn each other's games because there's so much collecting and so many deep rules and meta to keep up with. But what if we were the game that it's like the Digimon player and the Flesh and Blood player could agree to play together because it has the same feeling as a TCG, but it doesn't have the same upkeep that you have to do to be, competitive with a TCG. So that sort of inspired like where I thought we could fit into the market and where I hope we do fit into the market moving forward. Did you have any other thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I think that was a good discussion. I think there are other things we can talk about at a later date.
Well, with that, I will say that just to give y'all guys a taste, that pretty much concludes the origin story of X Seekers of Fortune. This has been a 3-part series to get here, but from this point on, it was basically what we covered in episode 1, getting ready for Comic Palooza. Because after we had that prototype and we knew that we had something that we were confident showing off, when LD came back to us and said, "Hey guys, do y'all want to do Comic Palooza? I could get you in." We were like, we have to. I at least I was like, yes, this is, if we need to start doing these sorts of conventions, and why not start with Comic Palooza? We have everything going for us for that specific one. So if you want to go around the circle and refresh yourself as to how this all started, or how that story, that would just be episode 1 of the podcast. We recorded that fresh off of Comic Palooza, which was over a month ago at this point. But yeah, so go back, listen to that. If you have any questions or comments about that one, please leave them below. And next week we're going to be going into our 5th episode of the podcast. So that'll be this first episode of month 2 of the podcast. And the teaser, just to give you a little preview as to what we're going to be covering, I believe we're going to be covering pitching and teaching a game. Winning folks over with simplicity and keeping them engaged with complexity. So we'll talk about what we've learned in teaching the game ourselves, what we've learned from other people, and hopefully what maybe even teach you how to play X Seekers of Fortune in that episode.
Nice. Well, I did want to just say something here. So yesterday we were talking and we had a conversation, and you mentioned to me how much you love guessing games. And so I thought maybe we could play some guessing games.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I love guessing games, especially with little context and, yeah. Okay. Let's see how this goes.
All right. So we've got some ASMR going on right now. Do you know what it is?
I'm not hearing anything.
Really? All right. Well, what you should be hearing, and hopefully the people at home are hearing, is the sound of shuffling cards that are sleeved.
Oh, okay.
Because this is a little primer for our guessing game. I have randomized in front of me a selection of Action X cards.
Okay.
And I'm going to draw one, and you get to ask me 3 yes or no questions, and we will see whether or not you can guess the card, and whether or not 3 questions is enough. So, you ready for number 1?
Actually, this actually sounds like a fun game. There's parameters. Okay. I am ready. Are you looking at it now?
Yes, I have one. Go for it.
Okay.
Question number 1. What do you have?
Is this card a feat?
It is not a feat.
It is not a feat. Yes or no questions are pretty darn tough here. Does the word caution appear on the card?
It does not.
Does the card depict hands?
Questionably.
Did you say questionably?
Yeah, let me give you another guess, because this is one of those places where Midjourney gets weird, and it's like, is that a hand?
That's even weirder to hear. Okay,
too much about it. I think it's supposed to be a hand, but it's a weird looking one.
Is the card the Thirsting Stone?
It is not.
Damn.
It is.
Okay.
But you still
Should
have
I keep guessing? Oh, I get what, 3 questions, 2 guesses or something?
Yeah, we'll call this one a warm up.
Okay.
All right. You have a second guess. I'm going to reveal it. You get one more guess, and I'll reveal it.
Okay. I'm kind of like trying to refresh my brain as to like what it could be. That's such a weird thing for you to say, that it might have hands on it. Is that a hand? Depicted? It wasn't a feat, and I presume it's not a sight, so it has to be a relic. And a relic that has maybe hands, that's a tough one. I'm going to take a far-flung guess and say merchant scale.
Incorrect. It is a green-eyed totem.
Green. That's a hand.
Well, it doesn't look very nice.
It doesn't look nice, but it's meant to be a hand. I would have definitely said that is a hand. Yes.
All right. So green-eyed totem, and part of the reason why I wanted to play this game too is I wanted to find a way to start introducing Action X cards to the audience at home. So I'm going to go ahead and read it before we move on. So green-eyed totem is a relic. It is a rune lead identity relic, and it is comes in with the classic choice that almost every relic in the game has. So you have to choose a mode, and you can choose to either play this relic nobly or ruthlessly. If you choose to play it nobly, whenever a rival completes a map, draw 2 leads. That's 2 leads for them completing a map. So every time they complete a map, you're drawing 2 leads. Trust me, that feels very nice. And then the other one is also very, very nice. The ruthless, if you are a ruthless player, which I know some of you are, whenever you complete a map, pick a lead at random from a rival's hand and put it into your own. So it actually says whenever you complete a map, pick a lead in a rival's hand at random and put it into your hand. So you are making them discard a card, basically, and you're gaining a card. So, I mean, very nice, very powerful card, which is a reoccurring theme in X Seekers of Fortune. Almost every Action X card you see is quite powerful. So, you ready for number 2? We're going to do 3 of these total.
Okay, yes, I am. And
okay.
Sorry, I'm just seeing that Annie, our social media guru, just sent us a message. So we'll get to that once we get done with this. But all right, is same parameters? Three questions. Okay.
3 questions.
Well,
yes or no?
I think my first question is always going to be: is this card a feat?
It is.
Does this card feature somebody like? Does it depict? Does the art of this card depict somebody is like from behind looking onto a scene?
It does not.
Okay. You'd be surprised. Like that wasn't that like one of Midjourney's like favorite things to depict? It was like the perspective of looking at. Yeah, the ritual cycle gets completely counted out. Actually, is a person depicted on the card I should have probably started with.
No, not really.
The person's not depicted on a feat card. That actually kind of limits it down. I'm trying to think. Well, not just think. I must admit, I'm scrolling through my cards here.
Yeah.
Because I thought almost every feat had a person on it.
This is a very borderline answer. This falls into the does it have hands category.
Okay.
So
well,
I think we could rephrase that question and get a slightly different answer. There's not a person on it.
Okay, I'm going to say make off with. It's the monkey.
It is make off with, which
yes.
is one of our favorite cards. Sorry, guys, trying to find a way to let you see this without glare. I'm sure that William, our intrepid producer, will in the frame. But make off with is a feat featuring Oko, who is this marauding monkey over here. And he is a rune identity feat, or at least make off with is. And as with most of the feats, they come with a choice. Not all, but most of these do, because who doesn't like choices? And that's where player agency and depth and complexity come in. So you can choose a relic or a map a rival controls and gain control of it. If you gain a relic, choose the relic's mode. So that is quite good, although reading it now, I'm already seeing something that we might need to correct about it.
We'll talk about that later.
And then it also has, most of these actually have this cool little thing where, like we said, we want to give you choices. Most of these have like a unique ability paired with what we call the heroic feats. So the option to do a heroic feat at a discount. Normally to do a heroic feat, there's some sort of additional resource costs, whether it be discarding leads or scrapping a map or archiving a active adventure. Technically, that's also scrapping, but you end up archiving it, whatever. But this one also has sabotage. And sabotage basically says any active resource, which is anything in your active zone. So it could be a site, a relic, or a map. This can get rid of it. So another quite good card. All right, last one. You ready?
I hope so, yeah. Let's go.
Oh, that's a good one.
All right. Well, I'm going to start because this kind of is like the 50-50, like it cuts out 50% of the cards. Is it a feat?
It is.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to go with that second question. I think Oko was the only exception to that, so I'm going to ask the second question, which is: does the artwork depict the back? Somebody from looking at somebody from the back and seeing the scenery that they're looking upon.
No, it does not.
Okay, that's cuts out at least 5 cards, I think. Does the artwork depict a single person in frame?
It does.
I'm going to go with Burn the Records.
It is Burn the Records.
Yes.
All right. Nice.
I had a feeling because we've been talking about this guy for a while now. Now on Burn the Records, we have this metal-faced man, or a man in a metal mask, like looking over documents that are burning in his hands. And we were talking about this as like being the lead villain of our story. Do you want to tell us your thoughts on the broker?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will get into the broker's story a little bit more as we put out some of the supplemental narrative content that accompanies the game. But for now, what you need to know about the card Burn the Records is that it features the broker. It is a feat. It is a glyph lead identity feat. And it says, choose a rival. They choose 2 leads and bury them. And so what bury means in the context of X Seekers of Fortune is rather than discarding a card and putting it in the discard pile, because in our game you can reclaim resources from the discard pile if they're on the top of the discard pile in most cases. These actually are put on the bottom of the deck that they correspond to. There are 3 decks, and these would be returned to the bottom of the lead deck. So trust me, at any point in the game, you do not want to have Burn the Records played against you. Losing 2 leads usually doesn't feel great, and especially doesn't feel great if you're in the final quest. So I would highly recommend saving this one for a strategic moment and praying that it is not played against you. So
yeah,
that's
and
the
something
minigame.
and something that you've always pointed out that we might as well let our audience in on. One of the secrets about this card is it's essentially unthwartable. If your opponent or your rival thwarts Burn the Records, all that means is that they discarded. They buried 2 leads. They just happen to choose 2 matching leads and give up a thwart for it. So that's one of the beauties of this card is it kind of, no matter what your rival tries to do, it has its effect.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I love about the game so much is that a lot of these cards do more than they say they do. And part of what is very, very fun about the game is learning the secret text of all of the cards. What this ability allows you to do that isn't printed on the card in terms of gaining information, in terms of forcing certain situations to transpire for your opponent. And again, as Joel pointed out, the secret text on Burn the Records is one way or the other, you're discarding 2 leads. I guess unless you are going to thwart it with something that has thwart printed on it.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, I guess that is the one way that you could get away from it. But even then you're still getting rid of a really powerful thwart card from your hands, which often you kind of want to use those for their actual abilities. So, and I think we'll get more into, I'm sure we'll talk more about putting those special player or the heroic feats on the cards here soon, and what that kind of, how that kind of changes the math of the game in some ways. With that, would you say that was all of your something random for this week?
I think that was random enough, don't you?
I think so. Yeah, well, very random. I mean, you drew random cards from a deck and had me guess them. I think that's almost as random as you can get.
Trust me, I'll come up with better guessing games, ones that are That's more painful in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get the best faces for the thumbnails for our podcast, if you want to get me really looking like I'm having an aneurysm, I'm sure you can take it even further than that. And I almost challenge you, kill me, please.
Okay. I'm going to take you up on that. I've got a lot of things that I need you to do.
Yeah, when you're ready. All right, folks. Well, why don't we go ahead and wrap up this episode? Fortune Seekers, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if you really want to get to the bottom of your fortunes, please follow us on social media. You can find us on TikTok at Mega Moth Studios. You can find us on Instagram at X Seekers of Fortune and on Facebook at X Seekers of Fortune as well there. Any final thoughts before we kick this out?
Yeah, a couple real quick. So for Instagram, just X_Seekers_of_Fortune. And then also check out Mega Moth Studios on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications. We will be posting every episode of the podcast, as well as how-to guides, breakdowns of cards, other interesting content about the journey and making of the game, as well as any other sort of gameplay resources. And then last but not least, the demo of the game, free to play, is available on tabletopia.com. You can search for X Seekers of Fortune. We will have links on all of our social media, as well as the website. Please go sign up. Play, send us your feedback. We absolutely need to make sure these cards are not busted before we print them, because if we print busted cards, that's on you. That's on you for not playing. That's on you. It's not on us. No, it is. It's on us. But anyway, that's all I've got.
All right, Fortune Seekers. Yeah, let's go ahead and sign off for this one, but we'll be seeing you next time in episode 5. Talk to you soon.
Guys. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.